Hi everyone. So I finally am sitting down and sharing my story. I have a drink. Kala is down for her nap, and I am finally in a place where I feel comfortable to share where I've been, what's been going on. If you guys follow along with me on Instagram, you will have seen in our stories, or in my stories, that I told you guys I was going to be filming one video for this week. I had no idea when it was going to go live. I didn't want to share with you guys the title, which you can obviously see now, because I just still was so unsure what the title was even going to be. And as you can imagine, so many other things. I hate that I'm even having to film this. It is a part of my life that's happened now. Like it can't be undone. It's a part of our story. It's a part of my life, and it's something that I want to share with you guys because it's opened my eyes so much to a world that I knew existed, but I didn't quite know the intensity of it. I didn't know the magnitude, I guess I should say, of how many people are a part of this community and how many different scenarios that there are. So if you're new to my channel, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Alyse. I'm the mama of the Sykes fam. My husband Donald and I have one daughter. Her name is Kala, and she is a little over 21 months old. And if you are new to my channel and not a subscriber, I imagine you're watching this video because you're going through something really similar. And before I start telling my story and getting into the details, I just want to say that my heart goes out to you, and this is not stronger than you are. You are stronger than the situation you're going through, and it will get better. You will get through this. I'll go ahead and start from the beginning by saying, if you guys have been following along, you may have already seen my video that I posted about a month ago. That was my reaction to finding out that I'm not pregnant. So my husband and I have been trying. I think it ended up being just 2 cycles before this positive pregnancy. And so the first month when I found out I wasn't pregnant, I went through this like huge cycle of emotions, and I decided to film it and share that with you guys because it also was an experience that I had never gone through before. So if you don't know what I'm talking about and you want to kind of hear things from the very beginning, I will link that video for you guys in the iCard on the screen. I think it's up here. I don't know. I never remember. It's on one of the tops of the screens, and you guys can go watch that. That way you kind of understand the base starting point, I guess, of everything. I will reiterate that our first pregnancy was, in hindsight, literally a breeze. We got pregnant right away, and so I've never been through any of this before, and oh, I'm already like getting worked up. This is it's overwhelming, to say the least. And so again, I wanted to continue to share this journey in hopes of further connecting with you guys on a deeper level. I will also say, if you guys are friends or family, know us personally, don't hesitate to reach out to us directly. This video, I don't know exactly how much I'm going to share, but it might be a little bit awkward if you watch this entire thing and you know us personally, and then maybe you haven't talked to us directly about it. So I'm not saying you shouldn't watch the video, but I guess I'm saying that you're more than welcome to contact us directly in case you haven't already. So since that first video that I just told you guys about, my mindset was very anxious. I was honed in on getting pregnant. And so much so that I would honestly say I was a little bit obsessed. I'll just flat out say it. I was obsessed with making it happen. When I want something really bad, this is my personality, like I'm going to make it happen. And you know, there's pros and cons to that. I definitely remember my mindset being like, this needs to happen. It's going to happen this month, and I'm going to do everything that I can to make it happen. And what kind of fell into that is that I started doing ovulation testing, which I had never done before in my entire life. I joined so many different Facebook groups. I joined ones for PCOS, trying to conceive ones in general. And if you guys have never done any like deep research into the TTC community, your mind will be blown. Just with the amount of people who are within that community and the amount of people who have so many different experiences, you truly realize that each person is unique and their experience is totally unique. I don't know that anybody can say they've had the exact same experience as anybody else. So again, it's overwhelming. I started ovulation testing pretty much immediately after finding out that first month that we weren't pregnant, and I was kind of up and down in regards to my emotions about it. I had heard people with PCOS could never really successfully rely on ovulation testing because their hormones were basically so out of whack that they would typically never be successful with them. I still wanted to try. I ended up buying the Clear Blue ovulation test. I think there's only one level higher that you can get at the like over the counter, which is the Clear Blue that actually Bluetooth connects to your phone. I didn't get that version just because I didn't need to be reminded that I needed to test. I was literally obsessing over it. So I needed somebody to tell me like, calm down. So I don't know if that app tells you that, but I don't know. I ended up testing even before they told me or recommended to test. So based off of your previous cycles and all of this information, you can get this date of when you should start taking ovulation tests. And I think that I started easily 3 days before that because I was so untrusting. Like I just was like, this direction is meant for the majority and they don't know my specific experience, so I'm going to do basically what I think is best, which I actually would recommend to anybody. If you have a gut feeling about something, you know, typically I would say that is the right decision for you, barring obviously any extreme scenarios. But I decided to test early, and I'm really glad that I did because I ovulated according to the testing way earlier, like a week earlier than my apps and the ovulation kit predicted. So I mentioned in my first video that we were really casually TTC in our first month, but one thing that I have done for months and months and months is I've just tracked my period in a couple different apps. Which I think is really normal. People just in general, I think, track their period just because it's convenient to know when your period is coming. So I didn't necessarily consider that a part of our TTC journey, but it is something I referenced this second time around because I wanted specifically to know more about my ovulation. It turns out the test was correct because we did end up getting pregnant. So the ovulation test that showed up positive early was correct. That stressed me out that I wanted to share about the experiences. I was obsessing over the testing. And if you guys have ever researched anything about ovulation testing, you typically get a negative response, then a high response, and then a peak response. And the high response usually allows you a window of time to kind of increase your testing. So if you're testing once a day, if you get a high response, then you can start testing twice a day or every whatever hours or whatever it is that they recommend. And then you will know exactly when you get your third and final peak response, which is what you want. It's basically telling you that you're going to ovulate within the next 24 to 48 hours, I think it is. And I went from negative to peak one morning, and that totally blew my mind. Here I went from somebody who was questioning if it was even going to work, and then all of a sudden I got this peak response, which I've now figured out is totally reasonable. Some people have different lengths of parts of their cycle. So some people just know that they have to test every 12 hours from the get-go because their window's shorter than the average. But at the time I didn't know that. I was like, what is this? Is this because of my PCOS? Like, it definitely kind of sent me into a tailspin, I would like to share. I was very like on edge. I was very frustrated in general that we hadn't gotten pregnant. I wanted it so badly, like, and I'm just sharing this so you guys can kind of like understand my mindset. And I also want to share them because I don't want to have these things be a part of our next experience. After I got the peak ovulation, I actually found out that you could also be testing your basal body temperature. Again, I had like never really dove very deeply into the TTC world. So it took a while for me to learn several different techniques that people use. Again, there's so many more that you can. And I got upset because technically I was reading that checking your basal body temperature was the only way that you knew for sure you had ovulated. So even though I got the peak response on my ovulation test, all of a sudden the little bit of confidence that I did have in that cycle was shredded, because you can get a positive ovulation test or a peak ovulation result and you may not have ovulated. It might just be the test picked up on something inaccurately. So at that point, I was too far into the cycle to begin testing my temperature, because you have to test it from the very beginning. Again, I'm sharing just very basic information with you guys because all of this, if it's something you're interested in more, I can do like a full video about my techniques and things that I've learned. If you want, let me know, leave a comment. So because my confidence wasn't really there about the ovulation, I was testing every day immediately after that for pregnancy. I tested every morning and sometimes at night. I bought so many first response tests because those are supposedly the ones that can pick up a pregnancy positive test the soonest. And I also bought some cheap ones off of Amazon. I can link those down below for you guys because you get like 30 of them for less than what it is for 3 of the first response. It's crazy. But because of that, there's obviously a difference in the detection level for pregnancy. So just a heads up, but in case you're wondering which tests I was using, I can link those. I was searching hardcore for a positive pregnancy test, and at 8 days past what I thought was my ovulation, we saw the line. So I shared the test immediately with Donald because I felt like it was a possibility that it was something called an indention line. Again, you can Google what that is if you don't already know. And I was concerned because it was the faintest of the faintest line I have ever seen. And there was no way that I was going to be able to like hold that in and not tell him until the next day when I could test successfully again in the morning. So I showed him and he was like, I see it. But he definitely picked up on my like skepticism. So he was like, you know, let's see what happens. I also had a really strange experience. I switched OB's office since giving birth to my daughter because I haven't shared it with you guys yet, but at some point, I promise, I think I will share my labor and delivery story with you guys from my first pregnancy. It just was so traumatic, you guys, that there was no possible way I was going to go back to this OB's office. I was calling a brand new doctor's office, and they were skeptical. I mean, who isn't skeptical at 8 days past ovulation? Especially if you're going to an OB's office that deals with a lot of pregnancy hardships. So when I talked to the nurse and I told her I got a positive pregnancy test, I need to schedule, she told me to wait. She told me to wait until I missed my period. And that was a bummer. It was a huge, huge bummer. Because that's not what you want to hear. When you get a positive pregnancy test, you want to hear like, oh, that's so exciting, let's get you scheduled. But because their world is so, I don't know, I guess you could say jaded by the amount of difficult experiences that they go through, it definitely comes across in a new experience for myself. So when I told Donald that, we both were kind of like, okay, I guess we shouldn't be excited. Like, we should wait this out. Which again, you guys sucked. Like, it just sucked. You want to be excited. You want to really enjoy this experience, and that it was kind of just like a bummer. I waited. I continued to test every single morning until a day after my missed period, or what was calculated to be my missed period. I continued to get positive tests. I continued to get darker positive tests. I tested with first response, and sometimes I even tested also additionally with the cheap test. And I finally started getting positives on the cheap test as well. I ended up taking a digital test. I don't remember what day it was, but it came back negative. But I had still been getting the darker and darker positives on the first response. So I was like, it's too early. Everything that I read online is like, you have to be pretty well along in those first few weeks in order to get a digital positive. And finally, I called the OB's office back, and they ended up scheduling me. I was scheduled to go in when I was going to be like 7 weeks, a little over 7 weeks. And I was excited. I told my parents, I got Kala a shirt that said Big Sis. We ended up telling friends because, you know, we felt like this is our second pregnancy, and I knew like no matter what, I wanted people to know. And it's just so weird, like thinking back, like I was already thinking like no matter what. And I think that was because of so many different reasons. Like I was already thinking about the negative, the what ifs. So early along, I was already thinking about that. But it didn't hinder like wanting to tell people. If it came up in conversation, or if there was a reason like we needed to tell them, we weren't hiding it. We didn't necessarily like publicly announce on our Facebook, and I hadn't told you guys either because I wanted to go to the first appointment. I wasn't necessarily going to wait until 12 weeks, but I wanted to go to the first appointment because I had this like such a damper on the feeling of it all. I want to share like why I think that I had those feelings. First of all, I feel like, you know, as a woman who gets pregnant, I think it's possible for you to know that something isn't right, something is off. And that's really the only way that I can describe it. As I continued to go further along into this pregnancy, I just felt like I knew that the pregnancy was going to teach me something. And I've told other people that as well. I didn't know that it was going to end in the way that it did, but I knew that this pregnancy was going to teach me something. And I don't know how else to describe that to you guys except for I just knew it. And if you have been following along with my story, I've been talking about this a lot. Over the last year or so, I have tried to become better about listening to my inner self and my gut. People call it tons of different things, but I honestly feel like that is such good wisdom, and you have it internally already. Like, you need to trust that. And so when I had those feelings, I was like, okay, you know, I had several conversations with God about it. I tried to kind of just like talk myself through those feelings. Another reason why I think that I had those feelings kind of circling is because going from that first month where I found out I wasn't pregnant and transitioning to like, we have to get pregnant type of mindset, like it was so intense. All of the research that I did included too much research, probably. Like, I opened my mind up to this world of things that were possible that I probably never would have thought about had I not done massive amounts of research. So there's pros and cons to like going overboard on research, and I think that one of the cons is definitely that it can change your mindset. It can affect your mood. And I think that it had done that. I think that I had become so worried about other people's things and stories that I was taking some of that on myself. And that is something that I won't want to do in the future. And then lastly, just the opinions of the OB's office, like the immediate, well, wait on it, you know, call us back when you've missed your period. Those kinds of things, like, I pick up on, obviously, and I carry maybe a little bit more than the average person. And so all of those things swirling together just made me have this mindset of like, what if? And I wish you know, there's nothing that I can do about it now, but what I can do is focus on how to make a better experience happen for me, for everybody the next time around. So around 6 weeks, I started feeling really strange. I was telling people that I felt like overly tired because that was the only way that I could explain it. I just felt kind of like sluggish. I felt like I was moving slower than normal. I felt fatigued, and you know, I think a lot of symptoms are brushed off like normal pregnancy symptoms. You know, just rest when you can and take it easy as when you can, which obviously is basically impossible when you have a toddler already. And I'm sharing this again because like this was the only thing that I noticed kind of around the time of everything turning negatively. So a little over a week ago, I had been working really, really hard. Like, I was trying to be the best mom, trying to be the best wife, trying to work really hard on my brand, trying to run every possible errand. I was walking the dog regularly. I was trying to hit every single goal of mine. And I remember coming upstairs and being like, I'm finally gonna take a shower. I'm exhausted. And when I went to the bathroom, there was spotting. I noticed the spotting right away, but it was just when I wiped. Nothing was ever on my underwear for those first few days, and it was brown. It was brown, which I knew immediately. I was like, that's old blood. So everything that I've read already in my millions of hours of research is that old blood is good in comparison to new fresh blood. So I was like, okay. At first, honestly, you guys, I was like, no. Like, I had this immediate gut reaction, like, no. And then I kind of tried to change my mindset. I was like, okay, it's old blood. It's gonna be okay. I should just take a shower and then be done with it. Like, at first, I was never even gonna like bother to call my doctor's office because literally everything that you Google online is like, spotting is normal. Even fresh blood spotting is it can be totally normal. I had been having like some other cramping, I guess you could say, very minor cramping, like minor cramping. And even cramping is normal. Even more severe cramping can be normal. So everything I was reading online was that it was possibly very normal. So I called my husband. He was actually out that evening at one of our neighbors' houses, and he came home immediately, and we decided like I should call the doctor's office, because if I didn't, I was just going to think about it constantly. So I ended up calling the after hours line, and I spoke to a nurse practitioner, and she was the kindest person I have ever spoken to. And she made me feel so good about the situation. She's like, I know everybody jumps immediately to I'm having a miscarriage, but she said everything that's happening right now can be totally normal. Even if it starts getting heavier bleeding, she said, when I'm concerned if you have blood that fills up a pad really quickly, like a pad every hour. I don't remember the exact number, but nothing even remotely similar to what was happening. And she said, if you have severe cramping, severe enough that you are like, I need to go to the emergency room, she said, then I want to hear back from you. But she said, for now, if you feel like you've been going overboard, then maybe you should take it easy. So I did. I put my feet up. My husband was very helpful. The nurse practitioner knew that I had an appointment 2 days from then. And so she was like, I feel comfortable with you coming in 2 days, and we'll check it out and we'll go from there. She said, for now, as long as things don't change, it sounds like it's going to be okay. And I'm like, okay. So that's exactly what we read online, and we felt optimistic about the situation. Over the next 48 hours, I got help from my mom, from my husband, and I got plenty of help. I had plenty of opportunity to kind of like be on amended bed rest, if you will, even though that wasn't something that they even recommended. They weren't like, you need to go on bed rest, because I have heard some people say that. They just said, maybe, the lady just said, maybe take it easy. Before the appointment, I had an increase in bleeding. So in between that night and my appointment, 2 days later, well, it wasn't even technically 2 days, it was like a day and a half, the blood would come and go, and it was still brown. It was occasionally pink. And then the day of the appointment, it turned red. And I was like, no. I remember thinking like, this isn't good. And even though she told me like, it's okay if it turns red, just as long as it's not massive amounts, it's okay. Even though she told me that, I felt like, no, this is not good. So going into the appointment, it was our first appointment. We were going to do the ultrasound first, and then have the appointment with the doctor afterwards, which is normal. And I remember the ultrasound technician, she was this older woman. She was very sweet. She was joking with us about this was our first time, so we technically didn't know, like, were we having one baby? Were we having triplets? Like, I'm sure that's the same joke she uses on every single person who comes in. But I just, I felt bad because she seemed so blissfully ignorant to any possible pregnancy problem. Like, the way that she reacted to everything just makes me think like, I don't know that she's ever had a non-successful pregnancy that she ultrasounded for. When we went, I was a little over 7 weeks, and they anticipated me being too early to be able to see on a regular like belly ultrasound. She still did one. She measured things. She said, yes, it looks like you are still too early for us to successfully see everything. So we're going to have to do a vaginal ultrasound, which is where they just take a wand and they look internally, which we did next. And she took lots of measurements. She was very, very quiet. The experience was totally different than our experience with Kala. I remember at such an early age, Kala was even, or at such an early stage, Kala was even like bouncing like around like crazy. This little baby was not moving, and was measuring about 5 days smaller than what my dates were saying. And 5 days is not that much. Like, I think actually Kala measured 5 days further along than what the calculations were originally. So 5 days to me was like, that's not huge. And it wasn't a big deal to them either necessarily, but they did find that the baby was measuring just below the threshold of when they require a heartbeat. So they didn't see heart activity of any kind, but my doctor said, like, sometimes, you know, the dates might not be exactly right. And so we go off the measurement, and the measurement is that this baby was measuring just below when they would require a heartbeat. So things were still possibly normal. He was concerned more with the bleeding than he was with the cramping or anything else. He said bleeding and cramping were very typical signs of miscarriage, and so that's where his mind was at currently, but they needed further testing to determine. They also measured the sac. I'm not sure what it's called exactly. I don't know if it's gestational sac. I don't remember, but it was measuring small. He also said that was not a good sign, but it's possible that it wasn't a bad sign. He said sometimes people go on to have successful pregnancies, the sac gets plenty big and recovers. He said, so again, that wasn't an immediate sign that something was wrong. Him and I talked at length about so many different things. We talked about basically the what ifs, because I think I knew. I didn't cry at the ultrasound. I knew, I think deep down, that more than likely this was going to be a miscarriage. And when I went in for the ultrasound and there was no heartbeat and it was measuring small, we kind of just, we weren't in utter shock. You hear about people who go to ultrasound after ultrasound and then all of a sudden they go to one and it's like the heartbeat's not there. That is truly shocking, and that's not what our experience was necessarily. They ended up having me do 2 different HCG tests. They had me do one that day, and then they had me come back 2 days later and do another one. Of course, the second one was on a Friday, so I got to wait the entire weekend long for the results to come back. And that Sunday evening, the doctor called me directly and told me that the results were not good, that my levels were dropping extremely fast. And by that time, I had started bleeding a lot. I was bleeding as if I was in the middle of my period, which is the heavier days, and I did that for several days. I think I bled for a total of 10 days. He talked about options to follow up. I still have to go back in about a week and do another test to see if my levels have dropped enough. And if they haven't, then I'm going to be doing a follow-up ultrasound. I can keep you guys posted on what happens with that. So far, I feel as positive as I can about the situation. There's women who have to go through extremely gruesome miscarriage experiences, and I don't feel like that's what's happening for me. I feel like my body is doing the best job that it can, and I don't have a gut feeling that I'm going to have complications, and I'm so thankful for that. I can't even express like how grateful I am for that. Because outside of the miscarriage event, people who choose to have it, to miscarriage naturally, have really, like I said, gruesome experiences. And I don't even want to think about it, to be honest. It took me so long, I guess, to film this video because part of me wanted to share my raw emotion in the midst of the storm. But I honestly did not even know and understand how I was feeling myself, let alone getting on camera and just like babbling nonsense. Like, I feel like that's what it would have been. Every single day I get stronger and I feel better about accepting the situation, being in a better position through this process of grief. Because we knew the baby was going to be due in November. We knew the due date. You know, like I said, we had told family, friends. We had already made a place in our family for this baby. So it's definitely a grieving process. But I already feel so much more mental clarity today than I did, say, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And I am so grateful for that, because there's women who go through experiences and they just like never can come out of a deep depression, and that is so scary. You know, I have, I think one of the things that I can focus on is that I have a daughter already. There's people who will never have children and will never have that blessed experience. And I just look at her and I'm like, you are literally the most perfect being that ever was and ever will be. And having that as a part of my recovery has been priceless. You know, I look at it as I have to keep going. You know, I have to keep putting one foot in front of the other, because I want my daughter to know the strength and power it takes to live life. You know, those were the things that were instilled in me. And, you know, I want her to have a life even better than my own. I think that is going to be it. I feel like that's the end. This is where I'm at. I'm gonna try to continue to work towards normalcy again. Our TTC journey is not over. I know that. And I have a really positive outlook despite everything. I have a lot of planned follow-ups to really like hone in on things that maybe were missed before, and I just feel really positively, and I feel good knowing that I don't have to be in control of this. I can take things day at a time, and you know, when we're ready for something in the future, we can be ready, and I can feel confident in knowing like I just have to do my best, and then the rest of it is in God's hands. it doesn't all have to be on my shoulders. I'm gonna feel good too once I get this video uploaded, because I feel like this has been a huge, this has been my entire life basically for the last few weeks, and you know, I want you guys to be a part of that. I want to share that with you guys. So I'm gonna be happy to feel like I've updated you guys. And again, if you've made it this far into the video and you want to reach out, I would love to hear from you. I'd love to talk through emotions or experiences of your guys's. I know that I had some people reach out after my last TTC video, and it was so nice. It was so nice to connect with people on that level. So don't hesitate to reach out. This is something that I will carry with me forever. So, you know, it's a part of our story now, and I think that's all I have to say about it. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in another video. Thank you.